In this video, we will be discussing wellness. What does it mean to have true wellness in your life, or to live a life that is well and healthy? And in this video, we will also discuss how you can better achieve wellness in your life. So when it comes to wellness, student counseling subscribes to the theory of the wheel of wellness. So what does this theory mean? Well, at its core, it means that any individual has 8 dimensions to his or her life. In other words, our life can be divided into 8 dimensions, namely physical, emotional, social, spiritual, environmental, financial, intellectual, and occupational. For us to achieve true wellness, or to really live a happy life, it's very important that we have a balance between these dimensions. For example, a certain dimension can negatively impact another dimension, just as the opposite is also true. A dimension can have a positive impact on all the other dimensions. So let's use some examples. Let's say that you are having problems with your relationship, and that can negatively impact your mood. So let's say, for example, you had a fight with your partner early in the morning, and when you go to work, you're already annoyed and irritated with your co-workers. And then that afternoon, you're in such a bad mood that you decide you're not going to the gym. So here we can see how the emotional sphere impacts your occupational dimension and also impacts your physical dimension. The opposite obviously is also true. Imagine for a moment that on Sunday you go to church and you have a really good experience, and you decide that you're going to make up with your partner. So for example, the spiritual dimension has now had a positive impact on your emotional dimension. So we can see that it's very important for us to have a positive balance when it comes to the wheel of wellness. When it comes to environmental wellness, we say live in harmony with the planet and your immediate environment. Research shows us time and again that it has an increased positive psychological impact on human beings when they spend time in nature. So if we want Mother Nature to look after us, it's very important that we also look after Mother Nature. So here's a few tips, and you can probably come up with more than me. First of all, recycle. Recycling is very important when it comes to preserving nature. I think lately in the media there's been a big buzzword around plastics and trying to recycle plastics and remove it from nature. Secondly, reduce emissions. Instead of driving your own car to work and back, try to walk, cycle or carpool. Thirdly, save water and electricity. I think for us as South Africans it's become increasingly important to save water and electricity. And of course, lastly, try to join a green NGO. In these green NGOs have a lot of information about how you can live a greener and happier life. So when it comes to social wellness, it's all about developing and maintaining healthy relationships with others. So here's a few tips on how to do that. First of all, develop an understanding of others and respect their points of view. Secondly, encourage yourself to experience different cultures. Thirdly, be tolerant of others regardless of their age, their race, ethnic background, sexual orientation, gender or disability. Fourthly, visit neighbors, friends and family. I know that it's very difficult sometimes to make time for friends or family. But on the other hand, it's also very unhealthy to isolate yourself. So if you want to have balance in your life, try and make some time for friends and family to go and visit them. And lastly, of course, be open-minded. And I think this encapsulates everything that we're trying to say about being socially well off. So when it comes to intellectual wellness, we say creatively engage the mind in intellectual pursuits. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically our mind has the need to be creative through our intellect. So it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're being creative and intellectual. So that's, for example, why people have hobbies. Hobbies often tend to be very creative. Some people necessarily don't have a very creative job, and so they pour themselves into their hobby to find that sense of creativity and to use their mind intellectually. So here's a few tips on how to be intellectual. First of all, be curious. Nowadays we have the advantage of the internet, and so we can be very curious and seek the answers to the questions we are looking for. It's also very easy to engage in new skills and learning via the internet. Secondly, we say explore your creativity. Find out what makes you very creative. Creativity doesn't mean to draw something or create a painting. Creativity can be writing a new computer program, finding new ways to save water. Whatever you feel you're creative at, try and pursue that. Thirdly, be informed about current events. This is a great way to be intellectual. Not all of us enjoy watching the news, but sometimes it's good to be informed about what's happening around you and what is happening in the world. Read and explore. Once again, the internet comes to play here. Read books, go onto Google, watch YouTube videos, go onto Wikipedia. Once again, seek the answers you have questions to. And lastly, develop a new skill. This is very important when it comes to being intellectual. If you are truly intellectual, you would always want to better yourself. In other words, learn new skills. And this is a great way also to bring out your creativity. When it comes to financial wellness, it is the ability to manage your finances in a responsible manner. As students, by now you should have the ability to budget. But just keep in mind that as you move out into the world and you go and look for a job or you start up your own business, the more money you make, the more important it is to manage that money. A very good resource, of course, is to find a financial advisor or simply go to your local bank and ask for advice in terms of managing your money. But as I said, as you earn more, you need to become more of an expert in terms of how to budget, where to invest, etc. So here's a few tips. As we've said now, draw up a budget. Very, very important. You need to know where you're spending your money. And if you're going to work responsibly with your money, you need to stick to your budget. Spend wisely. There's nothing wrong with spoiling yourself now and then. But if you're going to start spoiling yourself at the expense of things such as food, paying the bills, paying municipality, paying the electricity, then you're in serious trouble. And lastly, monitor your bank account. Sometimes it's very easy for us to avoid going to see what's happening in our bank account because we sometimes know that it would be a bad news scenario. But if we really want to be wise when it comes to money, check your bank account regularly to see what's happening. Nowadays it's very easy to spend money because we simply swipe our bank card and we don't always notice what's happening in our bank account. And therefore it's very important to regularly log on to the internet, go onto your bank account and see what is happening to your money. So when it comes to spiritual wellness, we say that it is the desire to be at peace with oneself and the universe or your creator. For most of us, spirituality means religion, but there's also other ways in which we can be spiritual. For example, meditation. Meditation is a great way to silence your mind and be at peace. Secondly, prayer. I think for most of us, we pray to connect to our Creator, which is very important for our spirituality. Thirdly, positive thinking. Throughout most of the videos, we've been talking about having a positive attitude. Positive thinking is a great way to be at peace and to have a connection to your Creator. Fourthly, connect with nature. Remember what we said about environmental wellness? Nature is a great way to feel at peace and to feel connected to the universe. And lastly, involve yourself in activities such as gardening, yoga, dancing, singing, hiking, etc. These are all activities that bring us peace and bring us closer to our Creator. Physical wellness is one of the most important dimensions of our lives. What do we mean by this? Well, basically, it's engaging in healthy behavior in order to maintain a healthy body and a healthy mind. In other words, what are we doing to our body to maintain its health? So, there's a few ways that we can do this. First of all, regular exercise that you enjoy. Find something that you enjoy and commit to it. If you, for example, hate going to the gym and spending hours on the treadmill, chances are very likely that you will not be committed to engaging in this exercise. So it's important to find something that you enjoy. The chances are much higher that you will persist and commit to this exercise. Secondly, eat balanced and nutritious meals. It's very important that we take note of what we put into our body to maintain a healthy body. We all know that something like junk food is not good for us, whereas fruits and vegetables are good for us. Thirdly, get adequate sleep, at least 6 to 8 hours. It's very important that we get enough sleep in. It's not just good for our body, but also for our mind. In other words, the body uses the time that we sleep to repair itself, but so does the mind. For example, have you ever had the experience of not getting enough sleep in and the next morning you feel very irritable? Then, fourthly, listen to your body and take care of illnesses. Sometimes we live in a very hectic life or a very fast-paced life, and it's easy to ignore what our body is telling us. For example, when we start to feel that we're developing a cold, it's easy to ignore that. But that can lead to flu. So it's very important that we pay attention to our body and do something about what our body is telling us. Then fifthly, be informed about the effects of drugs, alcohol, and smoking. It's very important that you know what the possible consequences are of engaging in such behavior, and to ask yourself, will this be healthy for my body or not? And then lastly, practice safe and healthy sex. By now we all should be aware of something like HIV or sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. So if you're going to engage in sex, make sure that it's safe and healthy. So when it comes to emotional wellness, we say it's recognizing and expressing our emotions in a healthy and constructive way. By now, all of you would have done the video on emotional intelligence, and you should be experts in this regard. So how can we live an emotionally well life? Well, first of all, it's important that we recognize the impact of relationships have on our emotional state. There's just sometimes people in life that push our buttons, or sometimes we're going through a tough time with a specific person. For example, if you're fighting with your spouse or your partner, that can also impact on other relationships. So recognize when you're going through a tough time with a specific person and prevent that from impacting your other relationships. Secondly, learn to express your feelings in a healthy manner. For example, if you're angry with somebody, don't yell at them, but try to explain to them why you are angry with them. Thirdly, accept your mistakes and learn from them. None of us are perfect, but it's sometimes very difficult for us to accept that we've made a mistake. For somebody that's living an emotionally well life, they accept when they make a mistake and they try to learn from that in order not to make the same mistake. Fourthly, be proactive. Prioritize to reduce stress. Don't wait until you're suffering from burnout to make time in your life to de-stress. In other words, prioritize some me time in order for you to de-stress on a daily basis. In other words, be proactive and prioritize your emotional wellness. Then seek help from friends and family. Friends and family can be a great resource when it comes to support and emotional support especially. And then lastly, when needed, seek help from professionals. If the support from friends and family are no longer enough, it would be very important for you to seek help from somebody like, for example, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a counselor, etc. So when it comes to occupational wellness, we say that it's important to choose and follow a career path that satisfies and develops you as a person. So what we mean by this is that it's very important that whichever job you pursue, that you will be happy in doing that job and that the job will challenge you enough to develop as a person. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, get to know your talents, interests, values, and personality qualities. It's very important to know what you can do or what you can offer before you choose a career. In other words, what is your interests? What is your talents? And will your personality fit the career path that you choose? Secondly, ensure that you have sufficient knowledge about your career choice and the work environment. So what I mean by this is that it's very important once you've chosen a career path that you do some research on that career. A good tip that I usually give my clients is to go and find out what a person does on a day-to-day business in that career. For example, if you want to become a journalist, go and find out what journalists do on a day-to-day basis. If you find that this is something for you, the chances are obviously very high that you would be happy in doing such a job. Then thirdly, maintain healthy relationships in the workplace. By now you would have watched the video on workplace relationships with your boss and also workplace relationships with your co-workers. And then lastly, strike a balance between work and personal life. It's very, very important that you maintain a boundary between your work and your personal life. Why? Because you don't want your personal life to affect your work, but you also don't want your work to affect your personal life. To give you a good example, somebody that's a workaholic would do as much work as possible, but then also spend a lot of time at work and not pay attention to his kids or his wife. That, of course, can be very detrimental to the wheel of wellness or maintaining balance within the wheel of wellness.